The dream of Athens. In 2004, Athens prepared to host the Olympic Games, a return to the birthplace of the Olympics after more than a century. Greece promised the world an unforgettable spectacle, a combination of history, culture, and modern athletic achievement. The plan was ambitious: construct cutting-edge facilities, modernize transportation and infrastructure, and draw millions of tourists to the capital. The government envisioned a national revival. Roads were widened, airports expanded, and hotels built from scratch to host international visitors. New stadiums, velodromes, and aquatic centers began to rise, each a monument to Greek pride. For 2 weeks, the world would marvel at Athens' ability to combine ancient heritage with modern engineering. But ambition came with hidden risks. Costs were already escalating, entire communities were being displaced, and environmental concerns were ignored. The Olympic dream would soon clash with harsh reality, exposing cracks in Greece's planning that would later lead to one of the most expensive and controversial games in history. Construction mania and skyrocketing costs. The official Olympic budget was set at $4 billion. By the time the final stadiums opened, Greece had spent nearly $15 billion. Rapid construction, political mismanagement, and corruption drove costs far beyond projections. Over 1.3 million residents were displaced to make room for Olympic infrastructure. Families lost homes, entire neighborhoods vanished, and communities were uprooted. While officials promised long-term economic gains, most venues were built exclusively for the Games, with no post-event plan. Even after construction, maintenance costs were underestimated. Pools, stadiums, and arenas required continual attention and staffing. With budgets stretched to the limit, Athens inherited a long-term financial burden, an invisible cost that would ripple through the economy for decades. The dream of national pride was quietly morphing into a monumental liability. Engineering marvels and spectacle. The physical scale of Athens 2004 was unprecedented. The Olympic Stadium could hold 70,000 spectators, while the aquatic centers, tennis complexes, and velodromes showcased state-of-the-art engineering. Architects blended modern design with nods to Greece's rich cultural history, impressing the world with both form and function. But grandeur came at a price. Many venues were built in remote locations, disconnected from city infrastructure and public transport, making post-games use difficult. Spectacle was prioritized over sustainability, leaving Athens with magnificent structures but little practical purpose after the crowds left. The ambition of the Games was unmatched, but the foresight to maintain, repurpose, or integrate these venues into daily city life was lacking. The stage was set for the post-Olympic reality: decay, abandonment, and financial strain. Opening ceremonies and global attention. August 13, 2004 marked the grand opening of the Athens Olympics. Fireworks, performances, and thousands of athletes parading into the Olympic Stadium mesmerized the world. Television broadcasts reached millions, while spectators witnessed Greece's cultural revival. Government officials promised that the Games would spur tourism, create jobs, and inject life into the economy. For 2 weeks, Athens stood at the center of global attention. Yet behind the celebrations, a silent problem emerged. The infrastructure, though visually impressive, was not designed for long-term use. Post-Games plans for venues were vague, maintenance funding insufficient, and many facilities would soon fall into disuse. The contrast between spectacle and sustainability would define the legacy of Athens 2004, abandoned venues and silent cities. Once the last medals were awarded and the Olympic flame extinguished, Athens' monumental venues quickly fell into silence. The grand stadiums that had once hosted roaring crowds now stood empty, their seats faded and cracked. Swimming pools, once filled with elite athletes and vibrant competition, dried up and became littered with debris. Tennis courts and velodromes designed to impress the world were slowly overtaken by weeds and wild vegetation. Authorities had hoped to repurpose these facilities for public events, local sports leagues, or tourism, but those plans largely failed. The scale of the venues and their isolated locations made upkeep impractical, and operational costs continued to drain the national budget. Security, staffing, and basic maintenance consumed millions annually, money that could have been invested elsewhere. These abandoned sites now serve as cautionary reminders that even the most impressive feats of human engineering are vulnerable without foresight and maintenance. A project designed to inspire national pride instead became a haunting symbol of unchecked ambition, where grandeur outpaced practicality and long-term planning. In Athens, the silence of these once thriving arenas speaks volumes about the consequences of overreach. Social and environmental impact. The human cost of the 2004 Games was staggering. Over 1.3 million residents were displaced, forced to leave their homes to make way for Olympic venues, roads, and infrastructure. Entire neighborhoods vanished, and communities that had existed for generations were uprooted. Schools were relocated, small businesses shut down, and social networks were fractured. Families were promised compensation that often failed to match the loss of livelihood and community cohesion. The environmental toll was equally severe. Hillsides were leveled, forests cleared, and rivers diverted to accommodate stadiums, parking lots, and transportation corridors. Soil erosion became a pressing problem, local ecosystems were disrupted, and wildlife habitats disappeared. The long-term ecological impact of these interventions is still felt today, decades after the Games. Every gold medal, every record broken came at a hidden cost. The spectators and global audience cheered, oblivious to the profound social disruption and environmental destruction left in the wake of what was meant to be a triumph. Athens 2004 stands as a stark example of how mega events can impose burdens on people and the planet that are invisible to the casual observer. Economic consequences. The staggering $15 billion investment in the Athens Olympics contributed directly to Greece's financial unraveling in the years that followed. National debt surged, austerity measures were imposed, and economic stagnation set in. The ambitious promises of job creation, tourism revenue, and urban revitalization largely failed to materialize. Operational costs for the largely unused Olympic venues became a continuous drain on public resources. Hotels, restaurants, and local businesses that had anticipated a sustained boost from tourism found themselves struggling once the Olympic crowds departed. The projected economic benefits, which had justified the immense expenditure, were never fully realized. Athens 2004 became a cautionary tale for the world. Mega projects, if poorly planned, can cripple economies and leave citizens paying for generations. The Olympics, meant to symbolize achievement and prosperity, instead revealed the vulnerabilities of fiscal overreach and structural mismanagement. Lessons from successful hosts. Contrast Athens with cities like Barcelona in 1992 or London in 2012, which successfully hosted the Olympics while ensuring a sustainable legacy. In these cities, venues were carefully planned for long-term use, community engagement, and economic integration. Facilities became public sports complexes, concert venues, and training hubs, ensuring they remained active long after the closing ceremony. Athens, by contrast, focused almost entirely on spectacle. Ambitious stadiums, aquatic centers, and athlete villages were constructed for short-term prestige, with minimal planning for post-Games utility. The result was abandoned venues, mounting costs, and public resentment. The lesson is clear: ambition without foresight can lead to monumental failure. Mega events require strategic planning, fiscal discipline, and a focus on legacy to ensure that investment today does not become decay tomorrow. Decay and physical collapse. Walking through the abandoned Olympic venues of Athens today is like stepping into a dystopian time capsule. Rust corrodes steel beams that once supported thousands of spectators. Concrete cracks under the relentless weight of neglect. Grass and weeds pierce through cracked swimming pools, velodromes, and tennis courts. Moss covers tracks once used for world-class competitions. Even the most advanced engineering of the early 2000s, designed to withstand decades of use, has begun to crumble. These structures, once emblems of national pride and human achievement, now stand as monuments to overambition and mismanagement. The silence that pervades the stadiums and arenas is deafening. Where roaring crowds once cheered athletes in the prime of human performance, now there is only wind whistling through broken seats and empty corridors. It is a stark reminder of the fragility of human endeavors. Time, neglect, and financial mismanagement combine to erode even the grandest constructions. The Athens Olympics reveal a hard truth. Without continuous maintenance, proper funding, and foresight, monumental achievements of architecture and engineering are not immune to decay. They teach us that ambition alone is never enough. Infrastructure must be sustained, or it will inevitably succumb to the forces of nature and neglect. And yet, amid this decay, there is a haunting beauty. Nature slowly reclaims its territory. Weeds sprout from cracks where human hands once labored. Pools reflect the sky above, while rusted beams frame long shadows. These ruins tell a story of both human creativity and human hubris, a lesson written not in textbooks but in concrete, steel, and weeds. Hubris, legacy, and cautionary tales. The Athens 2004 Olympics were conceived as a celebration of history, culture, and human achievement. They were meant to honor the birthplace of the Olympic Games and to position Greece as a modern global powerhouse. Yet what was intended as a symbol of national pride instead became a monument to overreach. $15 billion in infrastructure now sits largely abandoned. Communities were displaced, ecosystems disrupted. Decades of economic promises remain largely unfulfilled. Where once there was global attention and admiration, now there is silence, rust, and decay. The ambition of a nation, unchecked by pragmatic foresight, turned spectacle into ruin. For future generations, Athens serves as a warning. Mega events are not inherently virtuous. Even projects backed by billions of dollars and decades of planning can collapse without careful consideration of legacy, maintenance, and sustainability. Spectacle may thrill for weeks, but infrastructure lasts, or it decays. The Athens Games remind us that time is the ultimate judge of ambition. If you are fascinated by monumental ambition and its inevitable consequences, subscribe to Built to Collapse. Join us as we explore the hidden stories behind the world's largest structures and uncover the lessons they leave behind. Witness how human pride can reach unimaginable heights, and sometimes how it can crumble, leaving only echoes of glory and stark warnings for the future.